Good morning. I appreciate the invitation to take part in the annual Economic Trends Breakfast in Milwaukee. With votes in the House today, I am unable to be with you in person, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to offer my thoughts on the steep economic challenges we face in southeastern Wisconsin and how Congress is attempting to deal with them. In the year ahead, we are not likely to see the slingshot return to robust growth like we normally have coming out of a deep recession. Most economic forecasters believe high unemployment will persist with modest growth in 2010. In fact, the blue chip consensus forecast is 2.7% economic growth with double-digit unemployment. Many contend that we'll be pulling growth from 2011 into 2010, artificially inflating GDP numbers for this year. With across-the-board tax increases and higher interest rates ahead for 2011, I believe some investment and economic decisions will be pulled into this year, sort of a cash for clunkers on the full economy. A mix of anti-growth monetary and fiscal policies on our doorstep could even lead to a double-digit recession or flatline economic growth. Clearly, looking at the cyclical indicators, there is a real concern for inflation down the road. Not necessarily in the near term, but I believe we'll be grappling with inflation over the medium term, 2011 and beyond. I've been asked today to offer my thoughts on Washington's legislative agenda for 2010. While I hate to be the bearer of bad news, I believe we will see a confluence of economically harmful policies coming from Congress, designed explicitly to increase in size and scope the federal government at the expense of the economic drivers of our economy. The first issue of focus, government spending. Party leaders in Washington spent trillions of dollars last year in so-called stimulus spending, doing nothing to spur job creation. Then came the massive appropriation bills, with thousands of earmarks and budget increases for federal agencies, averaging over 11% a year. The Environmental Protection Agency, for example, got a 124% increase in its budget last year. The budget passed last spring doubles the federal debt in 5 years and triples it in 10 years. By any objective measure, the majority spending mentality failed to generate the jobs that were promised. While the results on their failures are clear, Washington's incredible response is to push more stimulus spending, committed to the notion that the only way to grow the economy is to grow government. Congress is also intent on passing sweeping financial regulatory overhaul. Legislation written by House Financial Services Chairman Barney Frank would effectively turn big banks into banking utility companies, seeding new Fannie Mae and Freddie Macs throughout the entire financial system. The proposal misreads the lessons from our financial crisis and would permanently enshrine the too-big-to-fail bailout mentality. Right now, most of Washington's focus remains on its healthcare overhaul. The deal-making continues behind closed doors as public support continues to drop. But I believe it is likely the leadership will get some form of their legislation into law. Missing out of the opportunity for real reform, Congress is set to create yet another open-ended entitlement, a healthcare entitlement that we cannot afford. The consequences of this bill will be felt for generations and forever alter our nation's healthcare system and our relationship with our government. Finally, a major agenda item is cap and trade. Bringing the energy sector under Washington's control, cap and trade passed the House last summer, but I don't think it has the votes to pass the Senate. The lost momentum on cap and trade has pushed the Obama administration and the EPA to take matters into its own hands, threatening punitive new regulatory restrictions on American manufacturers. All of these efforts, which began last year and could be concluded with signatures from the president in the year ahead, are rooted in a common ideology. The current leadership in Washington is intent on moving us rapidly toward more of a European-type social welfare state, where the goal of government would be no longer to equalize access to opportunity, but rather to equalize the results of people's lives. That's not the American idea. The economic consequences of this path are grave. High unemployment, economic stagnation, a mountain of debt that will guarantee a declining standard of living for future Americans. More and more Americans will become reliant on government than upon themselves for their own well-being, and consequently, more concerned with their government benefits than their own freedoms. This deprives individuals of the incentives to make the most of their lives, maximize their potential, and reach their destinies. The opposition party is obligated to articulate a principled alternative to this path. We owe it to the American people, I owe it to my Wisconsinite employers, to apply our nation's timeless principles to the challenges of today and offer bold, innovative solutions. With serious entitlement reform, we can meet the needs of health and retirement security without bankrupting the government. Healthcare reform that is patient-centered, not government-centered. Pro-growth tax reform to reignite the entrepreneurial spark in southern Wisconsin and across the country. We want risk-taking. We want job creation. We want investment. We want America to go forward with confidence to compete in the global economy. We need serious budget reform to get a grip on runaway spending, a failure of both political parties in years past, but a failure we simply cannot afford. We need to have a serious conversation about sound money so that our currency remains a reliable store of value, so that the credit markets and future generations know that we are serious about getting a grip on our debt crisis. Having taken part in this event in years past, I know that we often shy away from discussing the political scene in such sharp terms, but we are in a different place today, and the stakes of this debate require nothing less than complete candor. It is critical to our economic recovery and the America we pass on to our children and grandchildren. So far, I regret to say, there's little reason to think that our leaders are even listening. But if the American people are offered a clear choice and allowed to have their say, I am confident that we can restore the promise and prosperity of this great country. Thank you for your time.